There is an awful lot of pressure throughout the dealers, throughout the franchised and non-franchised network around making profit. Profit shouldn't be a dirty word. They're businesses, they're there to make money, and the only way they're going to do that is by understanding through insight what's going on with the marketplace as a whole.
For the benefit of the viewers and the listeners, if you could just tell us who you are, who you work for, and your position, please.
Sure. My name is Rupert Pontin. My position is Director of Insight, and I work for a company called Cazana't.
Fantastic. And can you tell us a bit more about Cazana't and what they do?
Sure. Cazana't was established way back in 2012, but we didn't really come to the market until beginning of 2018 with a B2B product. We did have a consumer website that ran between 2012 and 2016, and that consumer website was originally named UK Vehicle Limited, and we became Cazana't, as I said, in late 2017 as we started to move towards the B2B marketplace.
So how do you qualify a Cazana't customer?
Okay, so a Cazana't customer is somebody who works within the automotive industry, whether that be in the UK, whether it be on a global basis. We predominantly operate in the UK, and we help people to understand the current and future value of their vehicles.
Okay, and what would be one of the first benefits I experience if I was one of your customers?
Okay, the benefits of being a Cazana't customer is that you will get some very, very high quality insight that is based on real-time retail information, and it is based around data science and technology rather than relying on any form of manual editing of the data. So what you get is an extrapolation of what has happened in the marketplace or what is happening in the marketplace today.
Okay. And is it likely that a lot of your clients already have a lot of data that they're just not using correctly? Is that generally what you find?
So I think customers do have a lot of data. Some of them use it. But I think where we've gone into a period where the market is changing quite significantly, and we're looking at changes in fuel type and propulsion type, the need for other information that will corroborate and enhance the data that they already have is absolutely paramount importance at the moment.
Okay. And going back to the benefits that we'd experience, so in a day-to-day, because I think with data, people do tend to get a little bit scared of it because it's the big data thing.
Yes, I'd agree with you.
Means.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you, yeah.
What does big data mean in the automotive industry?
Okay, so big data in the automotive industry, I think, probably means that you are looking at a complete marketplace and assessing as much information around what's going on in the market as possible in one go, rather than looking at sort of individual pots of data. So where you might have a finance company that understands where they have forecast the value of a particular vehicle, that may be based on the information that they've got and they've experienced over previous years, but actually what has happened in a greater marketplace rather than just their pot of data is very much more important today than it was 6 months ago, 12 months ago, 2 years ago.
Yep. And it's also about the customer journey, isn't it? So being able to map the customer journey and predict it to a certain degree?
For certain customers it is. It's about understanding how that customer is going to potentially use a vehicle, how that vehicle is going to depreciate, and what value that vehicle will come to at the end of the journey. Yes, so you're right in that respect. But from Cazanat's perspective, from our direct customers, because we don't sell to consumers, it is about helping the customer to understand how they can use the data that is available for them. So it's not just us providing them with some really good insight, it's us holding their hand and saying, here's the data, this is what it means to your business, this is what it means to the marketplace in general, and these are the opportunities you may have resulting from using this type of data.
Really insightful in that case.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Very much so.
What's the business aiming for in 2020? What are you guys looking to do or achieve? Anything specific that's of interest for you this year?
Okay, so in the B2B marketplace, since we started at the beginning of 2018, we've grown quite significantly as a business in size in terms of customer base as well. For 2020, we see ourselves pushing further into some of the areas of the industry that are slightly slower to adopt new types of information or perhaps have longer procurement processes. So it is us moving in further into the contract hire and leasing industry, for us moving further into some areas of the finance industry where traditional providers tend to take a little bit longer to adopt new types of information. So it's about growing our business significantly in the UK. We also have growth aspirations for the rest of Europe. Whilst we do work on insight and analytics at a higher level on market information, it's about growing further into those marketplaces and particularly into the US.
Exciting year ahead then.
Very
You've got to
exciting.
fit that in between now and December. That's quite a bit.
We'll go a long way. We do move very fast, which is a nice thing. That's the benefit of a young and vibrant company.
That sounds fantastic. And again, thinking about this year, what are the biggest challenges that dealers are facing this year, do you think?
The biggest challenges for the UK dealer this year is going to be around what they will do with the new car market position in terms of the transition. We're beginning to see that already from the traditional petrol and diesel cars, although diesel has fallen away quite a lot in the last 18 months. But it's moving towards understanding the hybrid technology, getting the customer to understand the hybrid technology and to understand what that new hybrid and electric vehicle is going to be worth both now and in the future. And there is an awful lot of pressure throughout the dealers, throughout the franchised and non-franchised network around making profit. Profit shouldn't be a dirty word. They're businesses, they're there to make money. And the only way they're going to do that is by understanding through insight what's going on with the marketplace as a whole.
And just speaking on one of those, so going back to what you said about customers understanding the new types of car. I guess you're referring to electric.
Yes, very much so. Electric and hybrid vehicles.
What can dealerships do to navigate those challenges? Because I guess for a lot of consumers, a lot of car buyers, it's quite a big thing to get your head around. You know, why should you buy a hybrid car over a fully electric, and that versus a traditional diesel or a petrol car? How can dealerships navigate those challenges?
Okay, well, one of the most common misconceptions is that today's diesel car is a terrible thing for us. It is not as bad as many people believe it is. But we are moving towards now 2035 when we will no longer be allowed to sell fossil fuel cars in the UK. So in the short term, over the next 12 months, the dealer needs to understand and have some more confidence in how they can buy and sell that vehicle. That comes from two parts. Firstly, they need to be able to understand what they can actually genuinely retail price that car at. What is the consumer going to pay for that vehicle? And only by understanding that will they begin to realise how much they can pay for a vehicle, what that margin is, and whether it's worthwhile them doing. On the other side of things, they need to help the consumer to understand exactly what type of vehicle is better for them to use for their own purposes. So actually there are customers that are going to be absolutely fine with an electric car that does 100 miles because that's all they're going to need. Yeah. So the dealer needs to be able to help them understand that they will be perfectly capable of using that car on a day-to-day basis. Equally, they will then have a user that may need to use a car on much higher mileage, and in those instances it's identifying which type of hybrid model is going to work best for them, whether they need to be going into a town centre, whether they need to be having a diesel hybrid or a petrol hybrid, what's going to work best for them. So the challenge is understanding in this instance what the consumer is really going to use that vehicle for.
And going back to another challenge that you mentioned, this idea that profit's a dirty word. We hear that quite a bit. If that's been, say there's a dealership that's been around for 20, 30 years and that's always been one of their kind of things they've struggled with, how can they get around that now? What should you do to rid yourself of that feeling that profit is somehow dirty?
Well, do you know what? Sometimes it's actually better to explain to the customer that, if I'm not making a sensible amount of profit, I'm not a greedy person, but if I'm not making that profit, I can't give you the customer service that you need. And actually, in today's consumer-driven marketplace, customer service is exceedingly important. So the message here, perhaps to the consumer, is don't try and squeeze that price down because actually the dealer won't be able to afford to look after you in the way that you would need to. So I think being honest and transparent with customers goes an awfully long way.
Definitely. Coming back to your business, what's the biggest misconception people have about the service you provide, about your solution in general? Is there something that you have to kind of explain it isn't the case? Or is there any kind of misconception that you commonly come across based on what you guys do?
We don't really have common misconceptions. Because we're new to the industry, there are various different queries that we have. Some people ask very pointedly about where the data comes from and what volume of data we've got. People ask us about our accuracy. How can we prove the accuracy? Which we can do so because using the models and the data science we use, we can very clearly show that our pricing is accurate. And the other piece is around who are you? And so that is a very regular question. And if we go into a new customer, they may like the way in which we gather the data. They may like the products. They may like the output. We can demonstrate that it will help enhance their profit. Yeah. But there is a piece. Well, you haven't been around in the marketplace for as long as certain other people, and that's a challenge that I think any disruptor to an industry faces. Yeah. But we're able to overcome that by quantifying exactly what our accuracy means and what it will mean for that business.
Excellent. And stepping kind of to one side from your business for a moment, we produce this show because we understand the value of knowledge and getting guys like yourself to kind of explain things that other people may not be aware of. Outside of your business, what are the other people that you follow, whether it be influencers or other businesses? Where do you look for your information and your knowledge, your expertise that you gain?
That's very interesting. I do a lot of digging around on the internet as a whole. Yep. There are some key places that I do watch and look at to be able to get insight. I will look in a variety of different places across the internet. I find some of the very good sources of information will come through items that are published on LinkedIn. Okay. I like to spend as much time as possible talking to my colleagues and peers within the industry to understand what their points of view are on the industry. And then I back it up. I might hear something about a type of vehicle, about a particular trend within a market sector. Yep. And I go back into our data and I look at it. Yep. And you can usually see what has happened, why it has happened, and then I may need to make a call to somebody here at an OEM or there at a dealer group to say, is this actually happening? Yeah. Did you know it was happening? So that will kind of corroborate it. But most of my research work is done through the internet and through some of the magazines that publish online. Yeah.
Any in particular that you'd recommend that people check out?
Am I allowed to say that?
Go for it. Yeah.
I actually find Motor Trader very useful. Okay. When you're looking at information that relates very swiftly to the dealer marketplace. Yep. If we're talking about what's going on in the fleet marketplace, I find some of the information that comes from Fleet News very, very good indeed. Yep. Auto Retail Network is a very, very good publication. Okay. Very high quality articles that come through there. And as with motor finance, and also there's quite a wealth of information that comes from the FLA and the Vehicle Remarketing Association, which I shall shamelessly promote because I am one of the directors of that. Go for it. And it's a very good, it's a fabulous association. Yeah. It's chaired by Sam Watkins, and she does a fabulous job of growing that association.
Fantastic. I'm sure people can check that out. Okay, turning away from business for a moment and talking about Rupert, the guy behind the mic now. You're a Northampton chap, I believe?
Well, I was born in Surrey, and I moved up to the Northamptonshire area in, 2001. When I was working for British Car Auctions. I needed to be centrally located around the country and not look back since. No. It's a nice area to live in.
It is very nice. You live here with your family, I'm guessing?
Yeah, I have twins. They're 19-year-old. I've got one in Norwich University, and he's training to be a nurse. And I've got one down in Portsmouth University, and she's doing TV production and editing. So I see them as often as I can. Yep. But they like to come home for some peace and quiet. Although they've said they never want to stay in the village we live in, which is unique.
That is unique, definitely. And with your own education, how did you find your way into the industry?
I've always loved cars ever since I was a tiny child, and I always kind of dreamt of working with them. I have to say my first job in 1984 was an estate agent. Yep. That was my first full-time employment, which I did for a couple of years. But at the same time, I was actually trading cars. So it was sort of supporting the low wages of an estate agent. And I tripped into the motor trade properly in 1988, I believe it was. And I went to work for Wadham Stringer, which became Wadham Kenning, part of the Kenning Motor Group, in Guildford, in Surrey.
Oh, fantastic. So you kind of followed your dream in that respect, haven't you?
Absolutely.
I know we've had a lot of guests on here who who have, by happy accident, really, they've kind of fallen into the industry either through the love of technology or marketing or some other aspect. But it sounds like you completely stuck with your dream of working with cars in some way.
I think I always wanted to work with cars. Starting to sell them was an ideal start point. I moved to Glasses Guide in, 1992, which was my first tour of duty with glasses, and I've not looked back since. Combining vehicles with data and insight, I'm happy as you can imagine.
What more do you need?
Yeah.
And thinking back to the times you've had at various companies and various positions, again, you don't have to mention any names here. You may want to with this first question. Who's the best boss you've ever had, and why were they the best boss?
I have two best bosses, and one of them is Tom Wood, and Tom Wood is our CEO, and he has helped me to understand properly what life is like, and how exciting and vibrant life can be in a startup business that is successful and has a good product to take to marketplace. He's incredibly innovative, and he's helped me to understand new ways in which I can personally develop. The reward side of working with Tom is immense. The other gentleman is a chap called Nick Del Rio, who works, I think he's still working for them, for Auto Vista Group. So when I was working with glasses in the UK, Nick was my regional MD. And Nick helped me to understand the importance of personal development and the gratification that you get through helping yourself, but also understanding yourself, but also helping to develop people at the same time. But two very, very different business models. But if you're talking about two bosses, they're the guys.
I won't make you try and pick between the two.
I couldn't.
I won't let you do that. Sounds like you can't. Well, that's the point, I suppose, really. And the next question is along those lines, which is what characteristics define a really good boss? Because these two guys are obviously quite different in terms of what they do and the businesses they work for, but they must have similarities. What are the things that define a great boss from your perspective?
Honesty. That is the most important thing. And tenacity. You're right, those two gentlemen are very different in certain parts of their character. But the honesty piece is first and foremost for me. And the tenacity and drive that comes with Tom, and that I've experienced myself when I was running my own business, is absolutely critical. So those are the key things for me.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to have to ask this one now as well, which is who's your worst boss? And you definitely don't have to mention names.
I'm definitely not mentioning any names.
They know who they are.
Well, no, they probably won't do. But no, this person demonstrated to me the value of honesty because he wasn't. And he also helped me to understand that, if something goes wrong, you haven't done something quite right, or you could do it better. Actually, in my nature, I would always say, hey, this didn't go with the way I wanted, or I did something wrong. What can I do to make that work properly the next time round? This particular person demonstrated that they were never prepared to admit what might have gone wrong, might have had anything to do with them. I think that whole management period was difficult because it demonstrated to me that you need to be transparent in what you're doing, and you need to support those people that work for you when times are good and when times are bad.
Yeah, this might resonate with people listening, actually. If someone's out there experiencing that with their own boss, or maybe it's a boss themselves and they have a feeling they're perhaps they're not doing things quite right, what would your advice be to those two people? If we start with the employee who perhaps isn't keen on their boss.
Yeah, if it's the employee, you have two choices. Number one, you should find somewhere else to work. If you really don't like the environment you're working in, life is too short. Go and work somewhere else where you will be supported, where you can succeed, where you can share and celebrate success. If you're that guy that thinks that you might be not as supportive, as straightforward as you probably should be, take some time away from your business. Half a day, sit down and work through why you might have those feelings, what impact your actions may have on people that work with you, work for you, and see if you can't find a way forward that makes both you and them comfortable.
Sage advice. It's difficult for either person, really, isn't it?
It's very difficult,
Not an easy thing at all.
People don't always get on within a working relationship, and they don't always need to. But what you do need is clarity, transparency, and honesty that will allow each individual to succeed and also make sure that that business succeeds as well.
Yeah, it's great advice. Rupert, this is the new Armchair studio that you're in here.
Yeah.
What's been your experience today?
It's been absolutely fabulous. Lee, Tanisha, the team, absolutely very, very welcoming. Great discussion and networking we've had in the other room,
Yep.
which has been really, really good. There are some other conversations I'm going to have with somebody thereafter.
Yep.
The studio is amazing. I mean, it's absolutely wonderful. You're an incredible host. And the equipment in here just looks wonderful. I think that this is a fantastic operation here.
What would your advice be to someone who sees this or listens to it and thinks, I want to get involved in this, but they're a little bit nervous about doing so? What would your advice be to that person?
I'll pick up the phone and talk to John, Lee and Tanisha. If you've got something to say that's going to help the industry in the UK, help the dealers, help any part of the industry, people need to hear it. Come along, have a conversation, talk to you, Mark, and they should get involved.
It's not too scary, is it?
Not scary at all.